And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside of speed off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange!
Orange 25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Equalize.
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
If there's methane would be igniting with the flare, correct?
Yikes. You read? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to NSF Live, our weekly show where we have to find 3 people that look presentable on a Sunday evening. And also, we'd like to talk about spaceflight here. My name is Adrian Bile. I'm a host for NSF, and I'm not alone today. We will be with 3 people here today, starting with with Sawyer to my left, to my right, actually. Sawyer, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Adrian. It is a lovely Sunday afternoon here in the east coast of the US, and hope wherever you are and whatever time of day it is, it's great for you out there.
It certainly is in Germany. It's nice and finally not hot anymore. And also to my left, we have Ryan. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's just gone past 8 o'clock. I do have to say, in here it is quite warm because I'm upstairs. But it's we'll get through it.
There we go. We'll make it good for the next 90 minutes or so. Just to give a quick cockpit preview, today we will talk about, of course, Delta for Heavy because I'm on stream and I will not. I will make sure that we will not talk about this Delta for Heavy, and also we will talk about Euclid, and of course we will have a Starship Heavy section at the end since there has some events with Starship happened in the last few weeks. So let's start with that, and as always, make sure to tag at NASASpaceflight in chat during every segment and ask questions about the segment if you have any. We will always make sure to answer your questions of the related topic we are talking about right now. So if you have any Starship questions, make sure to maybe save them for the Starship section. And let's start with a certain plane that took off and apparently dropped something. Ryan, want to give us a quick summary what Virgin Galactic did?
So we have entered the era of Virgin Galactic doing what the company was formed to do, doing commercial missions with their space plane under the wing here at takeoff of the mothership VMS Eve. But yeah, it's very exciting for Virgin Galactic. They finally managed to, kickstart their commercial operations. It looked a little bit hairy after, I think it was Unity 22, the flight with Richard Branson. There was a little bit of downtime, a little bit of modifications, upgrades, and so forth. But we've now, with Galactic 01, gotten the first commercial flight with the Italian Air Force to do experiments and other scientific research, just really showcasing what this technology is able to provide with, even if it's compared to, orbital flight, a short period of time, but some microgravity, zero gravity, whatever you want to call it, that environment allowing Virgin Galactic and their customer to get some really cool scientific research done, which is just, awesome to see as always. Science always helps.
Certainly exciting to get these missions started. Sawyer, what was your impression about the flight?
My impression, especially being on stream for that one, the best was getting to see the views live in real time. I mean, seeing, once it dropped, the inside view, watching them kind of have their fun, float around, do their experiments. But also, it really gives you an interesting perspective on just how the vehicle works, how Unity is up there where it's got that curved engine nozzle to help it get into orbit, and then the feathering with basically having it go straight up while it's in space before it ends up curving itself down to land like a plane. Yeah, I'm so used to, I know it's early on already for your bingo cards, but a shuttle type reentry, and then you get something like this that's angling 90 degrees. It's very different, but it's fun to watch.
Yes, certainly my highlight for this mission was really the inboard cameras, because it's such a rare thing for these suborbital missions that we get like live footage of them conducting these experiments and doing their thing up there. And I really like that. So I hope we get that for future missions. Of course, maybe that's a bit iffy with more private customers, but I guess with the Italian Air Force being involved in this, it's a bit more easy to ask these. But let's hope they keep that going. That would be nice. We are getting some questions here, and I will toss this first one to you, Ryan. What launch or flight cadence do you think Virgin Galactic can realistically achieve in the long term?
That's a very interesting question, because at the moment they only have one spaceship and one mothership. So your cadence is naturally going to be limited to the number of vehicles you have. Virgin Galactic over the long term want to move into their, kind of Delta class program, as they're calling it, with additional ships and whatnot, expanding out the fleet size. At the moment, what we're kind of being told and what we're seeing is approximately a monthly cadence, so flying once a month. I believe the next flight will be at the start of August, roughly, what's being targeted. Approximately a month after the last flight, of course, because the Galactic 01 happened like right at the end of June, so it's hard to get another one done in July with such a short time frame. So yeah, I realize that I've now just been absolutely covered with the merch order, but I'll continue. So yeah, about a monthly cadence is what's being expected, and again, about a monthly cadence is what's being expected with the current fleet size.
Yeah, sounds like that. And I think if you look at the other suborbital launch vehicle being New Shepard, I think once a month might be an impressive cadence to hit. I just think, based on what we have seen with New Shepard, they have also we have seen some flights, but monthly so far seems not a fit by both companies. So them kind of getting into the groove here could be really cool to see going forward. And of course,
Yeah,
with these amazing access and views we had, it's even better, because it's cooler to have like cool onboard views and everything when you cover these missions.
yeah.
So let's see. Another question here we got is, it looks like there's some material built up around the Virgin Galactic nozzle. Is this from the solid fuel? Sawyer, you want to hit that one?
Yeah, that would be my guess. I would have to look at it a little bit closer, but it does use solid fuel on board the VSS Unity there. So it fires once. Yeah, there's the look at the nozzle there actually. And again, like I was talking about, it's got that slant to it. It basically fires once. So it fires once and then becomes its glider on its way back down. But that would be my guess of what it would be. I don't know that exactly that would be the solid propellant remnants.
Yeah, I would also. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, it has to be, right. It should be the only thing
Where
that
else is it going to come
area.
from?
That's. I mean, there's nothing else. Hopefully, there.
Hopefully,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Hopefully.
It's just the nozzle and the propellant. That's all there is.
Another question here is it possible that Virgin Galactic will be able to stay up in space longer in the future? Ryan, do we have any idea if they want to extend their flights, or is there like a limitation?
If they have bigger fuel tanks, or I guess solid hybrid motors, you don't really have a fuel tank. You just kind of have the motor. But if they make them bigger and they make the burn last longer, then naturally they're gonna go higher, which would make the flight longer. But because this is a suborbital hop, this is a straight up, straight back down, essentially kind of deal. You can't, without going any higher or going any further on your x-axis. There's not really any way you can extend that flight. But then if you go further away, you glide back. So you still need to be in the vicinity of the runway. So you can only really go up for suborbital hops like this. So if they want to go higher, then the flights would be longer. But I'm not sure if there's any plan for that, because then you need a bigger ship because you need more propellant. It's just the rocket equation scales up in that factor.
There we go. Another question here we got from Flirt Perspective is, do we know Virgin Galactic's net profit per flight? I do believe we know that they're charging about $450,000 per ticket, like per seat. But I do not believe we have like a concrete reporting on if that's like a profit, anything, Sawyer, right?
Right. We don't have the actual profit. We do know, again, yeah, it's approximately 450,000 US dollars per seat, and it is a publicly traded company as well, so you can kind of see their stock price, but that's about all we know monetary wise.
Yeah, that's rocket companies have the tendency to not really like to share their margins on every single vehicle. I don't know why, but apparently they don't like that. Also, I like this portion of the flight because it could really show you like how the aerodynamic suddenly hit the vehicle again and it started to shake and bounce. It was kind of interesting
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah, when people have
You
questions
can
about
see them
upper level
rattling
winds
around
and why
inside the cabin as well.
yeah, when
Yeah.
people have questions about upper level winds and why they matter, there's your answer.
Yeah, I mean, imagine that kind of like really hard wind hitting your space vehicle on the way up. That's probably not great sometimes.
By the way, I see we've got a poll
Oh,
going in chat right now of if you'd ride it if you had the money.
let's go
Also,
around
and of
the
course,
horn
I
for
wonder who
that.
made the poll based on that last point about saving up for point to point.
Yeah, I have after this I have a point-to-point question even, so get ready for that. But let's go around with that. Ryan, would you fly on a Virgin Galactic plane?
I would if it was given to me or I had the cash. I would, because between the Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin system, I prefer Virgin Galactic system. But even if Blue Origin want to give me a ride, I wouldn't complain.
I believe Ryan, you have
Yeah,
some
I totally
connection
do it.
issue. Yeah, I believe Ryan, you had some short hiccup there. Sawyer, how you feeling about that?
I mean, give me a chance to go to space, I'm there. Absolutely, I would still do it. A little selfishly, I kind of like the idea of the rocket style liftoff. A la Falcon 9 for orbital, or currently New Shepard for suborbital. But space is space. I'm still going.
Yeah, I am actually. I would like this. I made some controversial statement on the stream, which pushed some feedback from Jack. But I would rather do this than going on a long-term trip because I feel like this is the much more comfortable experience to go to space compared to like being there for 4 days. And I don't know, it seems more comfortable for like the first trip to space. Maybe that's just me. Maybe
I mean,
I'm weird here.
it alleviates bathroom questions, but other than that, I mean, you get a chance to actually see more of the Earth and more orbit. But I see where you're coming from, though. If it was maybe longer than 5 minutes ish in space, I would do the suborbital hop kind of thing. But otherwise, I think the preference would be orbital.
Yeah. Again, maybe I'm weird with that. Also, I promised the point-to-point question. Here it is. Could this rocket plane be used for a point-to-point trip? Who wants to tackle this easy-to-answer question?
I'll give it a go. I think, well, theoretically, yes. If I can go further, I don't think there's any reason why it wouldn't be possible. The actual practicalities of it then come in. The X that's currently being sold is a joyride in quotations to the edge of space. So, point isn't their business model at the moment, but it's still physically it's possible.
So there is a possibility that Crispy might be very happy because of this plane. But I guess there's also like a downrange limitation. Like you couldn't go downrange that much, right? It's probably very pointless point to point, just like a very high hop.
And part of that would also be where the mothership goes. I mean, technically, you could fly the mothership out and then drop it, but at that point, you're already basically flying on an airplane anyway for half the distance.
Yeah. So it's like, could you do it? Yes. Would you do it? Probably. Practically, no. But still, maybe it is.
But it's possible.
It's possible. Yes. Few hours would be great. Yeah, that's not possible with this. That few hours they don't get to be in space with this one. That's that would be a high toss.
Yeah, 2-3 orbits,
Very
I'd be
high.
good with something like that.
One final question here. How do the astronauts train for these flights? I believe we had an answer on stream about that, so I'm not sure. I will just tackle this. I believe the there was even a mention of it just being like a few days of training, and they would be ready.
Mhm.
Like it was actually kind of impressive how fast they got people ready to fly on these.
Yeah, apparently, according to
I'm
DOS,
not
who was
sure on
out
the.
there. I'm sorry, according to DOS, who was out there, it was 3 days of training for the crew. And keep in mind, the pilots have a lot more training than that. 'Cause there's the two pilots, well, the commander of the pilot there, and then there's the mission specialists, the people that are paying in the back.
There we go.
I'm not sure on the specifics of the training, but I definitely know we got images from Virgin Galactic of each of the crew members going up in like single engine planes. So they definitely got some, a little bit of flight experience before they went on the spaceship.
Apparently,
Yeah,
it is 1 day of orientation, 1 day of systems, and 1 day of specifics per DOS, because DOS and Jack were out there for it, and they got a tour of some of the training simulators and all of the stuff around Spaceport America. So excited to see what we're able to get from that for you guys in the future. But nothing else, got some really good info on and insight into that training.
Yeah, shoutouts for sure to Virgin here for the access they gave and like the abilities we got here to cover this, because I feel like it really enhanced all our coverage as well. It really made it better to talk about this. So thanks again to Virgin for that. Let's I guess let's move on to the next topic here, because we have quite a juicy list of cool topics we want to talk about here. But before that, I want to quickly thank some people here that showed their generous support for the channel in the last few minutes. And again, thanks for doing that, because that's the way we keep on going here. First, I will start with We Will Rocket You with 1 Red Team membership gifted. Thank you so much. Very regular to do this again, and thanks for doing that. Inner Space with the $5 super chat. Hey NSF, thanks for having a stream on my birthday. Happy birthday. Always love your coverage. RC Horseman, thank you for gifting 5 Red Team memberships. And also Chris B will probably now like you because you have a name with horse. And also Jim Cavett with the 1 gifted membership Red Team, and Jim Cavett with a $5 super chat saying he would go. So there you go, another person that would go to space with Virgin.
Yeah, the poll is really close.
Yeah, it's closer than I expected it, actually. I expected it to be like more into yes compared to where it is, but it seems like people are a bit on the fence. So
yeah,
let's see. Let's move on to another very, very cool and very, very amazing rocket where I'm not totally biased when I start talking about it. Sire, there was a Delta, right? Want to give us a quick summary of what happened there?
There was a Delta. In fact, it was the penultimate Delta IV Heavy launch. So there was only 2 left. Now there is only 1 after it successfully lifted off in the early morning hours. It was originally supposed to go the day before, but in true fashion, Delta's gonna Delta. And there was an issue with some of the ground service equipment. It was a ground system pneumatic valve that said, "You're not launching today." So they ended up going the next day, and that launched the NROL 68 mission. What is that satellite? We don't know. We think that it's an Orion spy satellite for the National Reconnaissance Office, but again, it's the NRO. Basically, we would tell you, but we'd have to kill you kind of thing. So, we believe that it may have gone into a geosynchronous or geostationary orbit. So the only thing we might have to kind of give us a hint is the slightly different fairing that was used, because normally it's just a typical composite fairing. This one was the one that splits in 3, which I think is really cool, the trisector ones. So if nothing else, we got to see the vehicle that lights itself on fire up, launch up, and I'm hoping that we get a great final show for the last Delta coming up in the next probably year and a half.
It's so sad to hear that. Every time somebody mentions penultimate Delta, I'm like, oh no, it's just 1 more after this.
Well, I mean, also because to you it is just the ultimate Delta anyway. But
yeah, wow. Didn't you use
First
already your
one.
pun token? I mean, the one in the back channel, I'm not sure, but
It took 20 minutes, okay? 20 minutes on air.
okay, that's true. But yeah, I really think Delta is always amazing. This was an amazing looking launch, I think, especially at night. And
Yeah.
I'm very glad I also got to be on stream for this, so that was cool. But of course, not really much we can talk about the payload here, because besides the fact that we got some hints about it being a Orion satellite, really, they also cut the footage right after the booster burned out. They didn't really want to show this, and I don't think they will say anything else than, yeah, this was good. That's like the final time they will talk about the satellite, probably on air. Ryan, did you watch the stream?
I was on the stream with you.
Oh yeah,
Can't believe you can't remember, Adrian. Oh my days, Adrian! Your memory is awful. I can't believe that. Oh dear.
Yeah, we were
Ah.
together on the stream. I remember.
Yes, we were.
To be fair, I was a bit shaky on the stream. This was the only time I was ever shaky on stream.
Okay, I'll forgive you. But yeah, it was very cool to see, especially with the hydrogen that just sets itself on fire at night, and it's the most metal of rockets, to quote Tory Bruno. It is just, you cannot not love the Delta, and especially since this is one of the most historical famous rocket families, and we only have one more launch to go. There is no way you can hate this. It's just an incredible thing to see.
I want to update everybody that there has been an ongoing discussion in the back channel about Sawyer getting pun tokens on air, and there was a suggestion made by Daz that this pun token counter is always set to 0. Just to give you an update here. What is happening here? This is a good one. John Dupker asking, could you explain why the center engine was dimmer than the sides? Sawyer, why was the center engine dimmer than the sides at some point in the flight?
Well, that's because it wasn't firing at full thrust at all times. The core boosters on the sides, those you'll see them firing completely at full thrust, so they look a little bit brighter. And then once they separate, you get the center common core booster there, which goes to full thrust, and then it gets brighter. So that's why it's actually slightly different amounts of thrust between the center and the side cores.
It kind of enables the center to save some energy here, and also it just looks cool. So that's another bonus here. Also, the fireball.
It's kind of like in Kerbal, if you have solids on the side and it's going too fast, so you kind of throttle down your liquid engine a little bit until you separate, and then you throttle it back up. Kind of like that.
Yeah, it's I also remember that there's this upgrade chart that I think they posted at some point. They kind of, there was a plan for at some point maybe cross-feed Delta, because there was a potential upgrade for Delta where they talked about how could we upgrade this rocket over time. And yeah, one of them was cross-feeding, so basically putting fuel into the center core, so as soon as the side boosters decouple, the center core would be still full, which is a very trivial thing to do in Kerbal, but apparently very hard to do in real life. So that's why it was never really chased.
Kerbal is click, click, and it's done. That's not how it works in real life, unfortunately.
Yeah, there was also the Delta Heavy with like the 4 cores that are around the center core, and then they even had a version that had the 4 cores and then cross-feed into like the few cores and then cross-feed into the middle. There was crazy upgrade paths on this chart. It's amazing.
Yeah, you could kind of see it just a couple seconds ago in that shot, too, of the varied thrust there.
Yeah, for sure. It's
At least it doesn't use asparagus staging, right? So we're good.
I also think it's better than that the initial version that was proposed was like 4 around it, because there's also very cursed Kerbal variants that have like the core, then 2 side boosters, and then just 2 side boosters attached to it. So it's just like a giant sail that is flying. That would be great for upper level winds, by the way. Like,
oh jeez.
yeah, 1 wind and the whole thing is like, whoop, bye. So I don't think we'll see ever that one, because this is the last one, the second to last one. One of you know when the last one is flying? How long do we have to wait until see Delta for the last time?
My latest number says February next year. So compared to this most recent flight and then the flight before that from Slick 37B at the Cape, the gap should be shorter. But you know Delta 4 Heavy, you know the NRO. They don't always stick to the timescales that they give us. But at least at the moment, it's just over 6 months out.
There we go. At some point I thought about sniping it and going to the coast to watch it, but then I was like, it's Delta. I mean, when are you flying? It's a complicated question, right?
Yeah, I have to say
you can't fly after it's launched.
But I do have to say, of the 4 that I've attempted to go to in total, of which 3 ended up launching, every single one of them launched on the second day. So once we do have a set date, just plan for a couple days and then you're good.
Unless the one where they ignited and then had to abort, where they had to replace like several things, and it took like...
You're right. Yeah, no, that one was 6 or ended up going there 7 times before it finally launched.
Yeah, that was the deltas of deltas.
NROL 44. The name that if you say it around other space journalists, they instantly shiver.
Like a feared name. We have one more question here by Emmanuel. Are the side boosters more strong than the main one? Like, is there any difference in there? Ryan.
That's a good question. I don't actually know the answer, but I'll apply what Falcon Heavy had to do. The center core had to be strengthened and bulked up for Falcon Heavy in order to take the load of not only the 9 Merlins on that booster, but also, it has 2 boosters next to it. So I'm going to assume that a similar process had to be done with Delta 4 Heavy. But of course, it uses each core is called the Common Booster Core, the CBC. So they're pretty much identical, as identical as you can get. With, of course, the side ones have nose cones, the middle one will have an interstage, and they'll have differences, but the core, the Common Booster Core, it's in the name. They're common, so that's kind of how that works with Delta.
I think the answer is it was already strengthened because it had for other variants carry SRBs. So it's already like a strengthened core, and since then it didn't need like any enhancement. It's just like basically a copy of the common core just attached to each other 3 times.
Yeah.
With 2 of them having nose cones, of course, because otherwise you would have 3 fairings, which would look funky.
Yeah.
Now I want to see that. So let's see if I have one more question that we could ask here. I think we are closing up on here on Delta. So before I move to the next topic, I want to give you one service announcement regarding Delta, because if you like Delta, like me, we have something in the store for you that you might like, because we have Delta 4 Heavy metal prints. And not only Delta 4 Heavy metal prints, but in general metal prints. But I want to point out especially Delta ones. If you click on the Delta section here, we have these amazing shots here. I mean, look at these RS-68As here. That's just beautiful. I really need to get that one, actually. I don't know why I don't have it yet. I should get. It's like questioning myself here. But yeah, if you want that, or want any other things, or just want to make sure that Ryan's face is covered for like 10 seconds during the stream, go to shop.nasaspaceflight.com, because you can achieve all of these things now if you want to really do that. So make sure to do that. Shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Again, we have metal prints of probably almost every rocket we cover on this stream. So make sure to check that out. Okay, next up, apparently Blue Origin did something. Ryan, what did Blue Origin do?
So, they didn't launch, no capsules came back, they didn't recover any boosters, but they did test the recovery of the fairing. This is something that SpaceX has been doing for a little while now. They just hit their 10th fairing recovery, or 10th reflight of a fairing that had been recovered, rather. and it's just like, oh, that's just a normal thing, but it isn't. This is a new thing, and Blue Origin have been working towards that. So Gav, who controls some of the cameras down at the Cape, saw that this fairing half, this huge fairing half, was put onto a barge at the turning basin, which is next to the vehicle assembly building at the Kennedy Space Center. Now, from this tweet, it might look, a little bit small. This is 7 meters wide. This is 13 meters long. This is a big thing. So this was towed out on a barge and then picked up by a helicopter. I forgot what it was, a Sikorsky Black Hawk, which, if you know your helicopters, that's a big helicopter. They need that to lift a 7 meter wide, 13 meter long fairing. So they lifted that off the barge and took it up to an altitude and then dropped it and then fished it out of the ocean. Which may seem like not a big thing to do in an area. From Alex's tweet here, it doesn't look like that big of an area. It doesn't seem like that big of an accomplishment. But, this thing's massive. To be able to recover something that big, it's just, this is a crucial process for reusability to keep costs down. And it's, in my opinion, it's really exciting to see Blue Origin, already ironing out these kind of recovery processes. The first successful test of this, I'm sure they'll have many more to come. This may seem like a trivial thing, but it's not. All reusability is good to keep the costs down. And as we move into this era of commercial space exploration, and you need to be able to keep costs down in order to be good competitors with your rivals, this is important for that journey. So it's really cool to see Blue Origin working on that.
I really think it's cool to see that at this point, Blue Origin is working on every part of their rocket's recovery. We, of course, have first stage recovery, which has been confirmed since forever. But we also have fairing recovery they are now working on. And we know that Project Jarvis is ongoing for their upper stage recovery. So at this point, Blue Origin is truly working on a fully reusable launch vehicle in theory. So yes, you can always poke at them for, New Glenn has not launched yet. Yeah, but they are doing something that is quite hard to do, which is developing a fully reusable launch vehicle. We only know like 2 other companies, I think, right now on the world that are working on a fully reusable launch vehicle, which are, of course, Terran R and Starship from their respective companies. So, I'm kind of Blue Origin. I like the New Glenn. I have to admit that. But Sawyer, what's your thought on all of this, on like the efforts of New Glenn?
I mean, any heavy lifter is a good lifter in my book, especially, like you said, with the reusability. I know even for Falcon 9, there was talks way back in the day of how could we potentially recover the second stages. I think a bouncy castle at one point was even considered. And these plans all evolve. Like originally, again, SpaceX's fairing recovery was the giant nets, which they got rid of, and now they're just kind of parachuting down and fishing them out and refurbishing them. So it'll be interesting to see what method they end up going with, if they still continue with the helicopter method like they're testing here, or what their final recovery method's going to be. But it's interesting to see the development now of what will end up being, hopefully in the future, a regular occurrence like we see now of, they're just picking it up and they're going to fly it again.
I think we had some fairings at SpaceX already being like in the very high single digits and like numbers in reuse, which is just crazy because these things cost millions, and recovering them, that's good. I like that. One question we got here from Nicholas is the fairing catch test program part of the Jarvis program? So Ryan, do you want to give us a quick overview? What's the Jarvis program actually, and is this connected?
So the Jarvis program is, I don't want to call it Blue Origin's like version of Starship, because it's not, but it also is kind of similar. It's a reusable second stage. So if we just go strip it right back down to the basics, Starship is a reusable second stage. Project Jarvis is a reusable second stage. So it's basically Blue Origin's way of building a second stage that will be able to come back to Earth and then be reflown. So at the most simplest of details, that's what Project Jarvis is. I'm not sure if these specific fairing tests will be linked to the Jarvis program. Depends if Jarvis in the long run has variants with fairings that pop off. I don't know how many variants of Jarvis Blue Origin are going to be planning and flying with. So yeah, I don't know that, but I mean, this fairing recovery definitely seems more for the initial flights of New Glenn, which will see the second stage not recovered, but the fairings will pop off or separate and then parachute back down to the ocean.
And I also want to just quickly add, because I said it earlier, the situation with Terran R is a bit uncertain because new renders look like they're no longer going for second stage recovery. Just to put that out there, so it might just be Starship right now that is really like actively also trying to pursue fully.
I was going to say Neutron, but then the second stage isn't being recovered. So yeah, it is kind of now just Starship. Thinking about it, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of really a big effort to go through. Alan C asking, do you think Blue Origin will get to a fully reusable rocket, first and second stage, before SpaceX? Sawyer, what's your take on this question?
I mean, I obviously I love the competition, and the competition is that really breeds these evolvements and creativity and advancements that we've been seeing in spaceflight. That's the word. Advancements. There is one significant difference, and that is we have a first and second stage that have already been stacked together and built and on the launch pad and actually tested each individually. And then we had the integrated flight test, so at least the first stage we got to see. Blue Origin, so far we have seen test articles. We've seen a lot of things rolling in and out of the hangar there. We've seen some great stuff on the flyover of the progress that they're making, peaks inside the 2CAT facility and everything, but we haven't seen a fully stacked rocket on that yet. So if I had to put my bet on it, I think SpaceX still has the edge. But that doesn't mean that Blue Origin isn't going to stop pushing. And I think the better question then would be who's going to be the first to launch it from the Cape. If we put it that way, then I think we have a much closer competition.
Yeah, it seems like a different model these companies are approaching right now. Of course, SpaceX is going with their very hardware heavy approach, which they're like SpaceX, like it's very typical SpaceX. And Blue Origin is always hard to judge because we sometimes get peeks and like lucky peeks into their factories, but it's not like they're building it next to a highway in Texas, so we can just put cameras on it all the time, so we know every ring in and out. So it's always hard to judge. It's always hard to observe, and also they have not really like talked about what's the exact approach and like timeline for second stage reuse. Because we could still see a situation where New Glenn flies in 2 years, but, well, like in 1 or 2 years, but it's not fully reusable yet because they are not pursuing second stage reusability from the start. So, yeah, it's hard to judge. So, hey, Blue Origin, wanna open that door a bit? That would be cool.
Yeah, let's put some 24/7 cameras inside of your factory.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think we are game. Just call us. Flop Perspective here asking, do we know the expected launch cadence for Blue Origin? Ryan, do we know the expected launch cadence for Blue Origin?
Well, like Adrian just said, it's kind of a lot of stuff is unknown because Blue Origin isn't, the most open of companies. I'll put it that way. That their CEO isn't always talking about it on Twitter, and there's there are certainly more open aerospace companies. I'll put it that way. So there are a lot of details which we are yet to have been told of.
Yeah, it's I guess we can expect more than, for example, a Delta, because Delta was really like this once a year kind of rocket.
Yeah, hopefully more than a Delta.
Yeah, it's like that's the baseline, like more than a Delta.
Yeah.
But
of course, Adrian would bring it back to Delta.
Yeah, it's my shuttle. It's my personal shuttle. So I always have to bring it up. But I mean, with the connection to the Kuiper constellation, they at least hope to get it up and running faster because they kind of need it for different kind of projects, and of course also like Orbital Reef, their space station, and and Artemis. So they have some contracts in the pipeline, because I think it's always kind of forgotten that New Glenn is now in the Artemis program, because it is needed
Yeah.
for Artemis 5 now. So
And they're also still making the BE4s as well for Vulcan
yeah,
and New Glenn, I think, right?
yeah. So
Yeah,
like
it's
Blue
a
Origin is
very
tied in a lot of space programs right now. If you look at like what
Mhm.
Vulcan is tied into, and like where New Glenn is tied into, and Blue Origin is tied into, it's a lot of things that really depend on BE4 and New Glenn working. That's an interesting one. I like this question. What do you expect will happen to New Shepard when New Glenn begins launching? Sire, what happens to New Shepard?
Nothing. It will still fly. I mean, when you think about it, you've got New Glenn and New Shepard. New Shepard is kind of like the billionaire's toy. I don't know how else to put it right now. That's for the paying customers that want that little short hop to space. They'll pay their money, they get the pictures, they get to then write a book all about death and stuff. Oh wait, that's William Shatner. But they get to go up and fly and go into space and do their thing. It's also been used for quick suborbital research experiments, whereas New Glenn is going to be the heavy lifter. That you don't need a giant rocket like that to send people just above the Kármán line. So
Yeah.
one will be for the heavy payloads, big satellites, Kuiper constellations, Artemis, all of that good stuff. And the other will do its little hops from Texas and allow some suborbital research and suborbital tourism.
It's not like a situation where, example, with Falcon 9 and Starship, where you could see the purpose of the one being replaced by the other, because they kind of do the same thing. New Shepard is not really doing the same thing as New Glenn. It's just it's just like a different thing. And of course, as pointed out in the back channel here, it's also a test bed for what they're doing right now. Because they learn launching, they learn handling hydrogen, they learn the software to land. Because I mean, yes, they are not landing an orbital booster, but they're still landing a booster, which is that's like
Yeah.
it would be very impressive if there's not like this other rocket company who regularly just lands orbital class boosters on a barge. But overall, I think it's it's like a good it's a good product that the company developed, and I think overall we expect it to launch soon again after the FAA investigation is according like almost complete. So we expect like the New Shepard to return to flight very soon after the initial mishap with the nozzle malfunction on the last mission. Which props again to Blue for showing the whole explosion and everything. They didn't cut away. They showed it.
No.
Yeah, showing all of it. It's a novel concept. I mean, novel concept. Yeah.
How do you do this? It's always so fast. It's
I don't know. That's the scary part.
I'm yeah, it's kind of impressive sometimes. How will Vulcan affect New Glenn, and also will they crew rate New Glenn and Vulcan? Ryan, any thoughts on this question?
That's a very interesting question. There's a lot to digest in that, because obviously some payloads have already been, or a lot of payloads have already been contracted on Vulcan and or New Glenn in the case of Kuiper. I'm personally thinking along the lines of Boeing's Starliner and Sierra Space's Dream Chaser. Those have been they've been looking at ULA basically since the beginning. They haven't been looking at Blue Origin. So I'm certainly not expecting New Glenn to steal all of Vulcan's, cargo to the ISS, cruise, spaceflight. I'm not expecting that. But it will certainly add capacity to that sector. It will allow vehicles like that to fly on New Glenn, but they then have to go through the entire regulatory process of going to crew rate. It's not a slick process, it's not a simple process. It's a lot of paperwork to do that. So I don't actually think they will impact each other as much as it may seem, just because most of the stuff has already been contracted, and it has been for years, because Vulcan was meant to launch years ago, New Glenn was meant to launch years ago, that's, or at least that's what we were told. So, I don't think they actually affect each other that bad.
I believe the only thing I would add to this is right now we expect New Glenn to probably be crew rated, because it's contracted, I think, to launch to Orbital Reef, if I have that correct in my mind. So that would be the only
Essentially.
thing I would add to this. But I think that's still, there's a lot of question marks also in this development process, and when that will happen and how this will roll out. But I think that's the only the only time that both of these vehicles have been mentioned together with crew rating so far, because of course one of them has to bring people to Orbital Reef, because I cannot imagine that Blue Origin will contract SpaceX to bring customers to the space station. That's at least my expectation right now. Well, but we'll see.
Yeah. We'll find out.
Moving on here, but before we do that, I want to quickly thank some people here again. David Lane with the $10 super chat. Gotta love the guys. Thank you so much. Patrick here with the $5 super chat. SpaceX and Blue Origin should do a race to see whose new rocket can get into orbit faster. Who do you think would win? Like, faster in the sense of they launch at the same time, and who gets there faster? Like, is it like who gets faster in the overall time scale, or like who has the better thrust to weight?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
Orbital scale, but I would totally love to see, instead of drag racing, rocket racing like that.
Yeah. Fighting the atmosphere.
I think with the fact that New Glenn is hydrogen based on the upper stage, I think that's the moment where probably Starship takes the win, because hydrogen is not really known for producing high energy second stages that produce a lot of thrust. They are more efficient, but not racing material.
Plus Raptors.
Yeah, Raptor are kind of known for being racing material, so I think Starship will get to orbit faster if you launch New Glenn Starship at the same time. That's my really uneducated prediction here, based on knowing nothing about the profiles out of the top of my head. Sure is nice. Thank you for becoming a Capcom member. Capcom actually gives you access to our members Discord, which I would really check out. It's a really good place to hang out, especially if you like a rocket discussion all day, because I can make sure I can promise you there's not a moment on this Discord where somebody's not talking about rockets in some of the channels. It's always happening. It's sometimes it's hard to keep up. John also saying, just want to say thanks for a great show today with the $10 super chat. John, thanks. I'm glad you're enjoying it. We enjoyed it so far as well, I would say, and we have two more very juicy topics ahead of us. And I would throw to Sawyer for the first one, because there was a very important payload that launched the other day, right?
Oh yeah, the other day being just yesterday. That was the launch of the Euclid telescope, built by the European Space Agency, or the missions for the European Space Agency. That successfully lifted off on a Falcon 9 from Cape Canaveral at 11:12 a.m. Eastern. Only reason I remember all the exact numbers because I was there for it. But this mission is really, really cool. So there's so much of the universe that we really don't know. In fact, we only know we only know a tiny bit of what's actually in the universe, of what we can see with all of the atoms and elements and things like that. But there's so much more. There's dark matter and dark energy that we haven't really been able to get into and see and study. So that's what this is all about. This is trying to find and understand the nature of this dark matter, what makes up so much of our universe, at least from what we believe right now. So that's successfully launched, built by Thales Alenia Aerospace, and its main goal is to map at least 36% of the sky over the duration of its primary mission, which is 6 years. But as we've seen with many other missions, they will sometimes get a secondary one. And I mean, in terms of the amount of sky and all of that, you're talking a sensor that's smaller than the one at James Webb, but gets such a wider view that you can see so much more of this. And it is out in the same area, or will be when it's up and running, out in the same area as James Webb, which is the Lagrange 2 point, or L2, just past the moon.
Certainly a mission that I enjoyed a lot because, well, it's a ESA mission. It's really cool to see like such a big profile, or like bigger profile ESA mission being executed. So that was really cool for me, and I really enjoyed that. Ryan, what did you think about the launch?
I thought it was, I dare use the word standard, but it did just look like, a bog standard Falcon 9 launch going to a very special location, shooting this all the way onto a transfer orbit to L2. This is pretty much as high profile as you can get in terms of energy being expended, with the furthest downrange recovery of a Falcon 9 booster. I mean, it's just, this kind of ticks all the boxes for a really high energy mission, and according to ESA, SpaceX and the Falcon 9 did, a perfect job.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Seeing that one in person again, I've seen a bunch of them. It never gets old, but there's something different about seeing launches that are, these big scientific missions. Like, rockets are cool and all, but you get that little extra flutter of like, okay, you're seeing something historic that has a chance to basically upend what we know about our entire existence and our universe and how we got here and things like that. It just makes it that much more exciting, I guess, and interesting. And yeah, it was also a gorgeously clear day, gorgeous launch, and also very historic for this sense in that this is its second or third rocket that this spacecraft was trying to get on, basically. It originally was slated to fly on a Soyuz out of French Guiana. Problem is, there's the whole Russian-Ukraine war thing, and Russia said, yeah, we're not giving you any more Soyuz. And they pulled out all their people, so there went their rocket. So it was, okay, now what? Ariane 5s were all taken. Ariane 6 is still not flying yet, and they want to get this up. So they went to SpaceX, said, hey, will we be able to make this happen? And the answer, obviously, as we saw, was yes.
And we could make a whole show of like inviting all the Europeans from NSF and talk about the availability of European launch infrastructure right now. I think it would be a great show. Everybody would be so excited. Let's dive into the question here because we got a lot here. First one, Karsten here. Can Euclid be used for other observations than dark matter? Sawyer, can it be used for other observations than dark matter?
I mean, I'm sure that's going to be their main use for it. A lot of it, I guess, is just going to be what they can do with their instruments. So, from my understanding, it would be yes, because there's two main instruments on board, if I recall correctly. And each one is studying slightly different aspects of the universe. So, based on what band it's in, yeah, because a lot of it also is looking at certain things like redshift, again, which is the universe expands, you see it in the red color, looking at the way that light warps galaxies, things like that. Because you can't see dark matter and dark energy itself. The way that you can kind of study it is to see its effect through gravity on other objects and other things in space. So by that nature alone, you can already study those other objects and do so much more science with it too.
Another question here got by Ross is, what are the dimensions of the optics on Euclid? Do we know what size the optics have compared to, like, for example, other space telescopes? Anybody? Oh, good.
I have just brought up the numbers, so I'm not sure comparing to others, but the actual telescope is called the Quarsh telescope. That's the type of the telescope. It has a diameter of 1.2 meters, a focal length of 24.5 meters, and a collecting area of just a teeny smidge over 1 meter square, which for those of you in the United States is just over 10 square feet. So there you go. And it has a pretty good resolution too, 0.1 arc second for visible light and 0.3 arc second in the near infrared spectrum there.
And I think the James Webb, for example, had 6.5 meters of a telescope, I think, if I remember correctly. So about 5 to 6 times bigger. Just to add that. James Webb took 6 months to start gathering data. Why does Euclid only take 3 months to gather data? Sorry, why is it faster?
It's I don't mean to make it sound bad, but it's smaller and it's less complex. I mean, if you think of James Webb, it had to unfold all of those mirrors, as you can even hear in the intro with the folds to go, and deploy its large sun shield. Whereas this one already has it set up so that it's got, the solar panel that's set to face the sun. You don't need that giant sun shield to unfold. So mainly, it's once you're out there, it's all about just testing it, making sure all your instruments are up and running. You do a couple test shots, some alignment shots, make sure your instruments are doing what they're supposed to do, and then you can get right into the science. So since it's wording, less complex means quicker iteration, but still can do some massive science.
Yeah, we won't have the whole situation that we have with James Webb, where there were like websites tracking the unfolding of the telescope and everything. This is not happening here, where we have to watch like 500 steps before we can really celebrate the mission. So that's a good point. That's another question here. Are there other payloads ESA will have to get to launch by SpaceX because of the Ariane 6 and Vega C delay / problems? So, do we know of any other missions so far? Go ahead, Ryan.
I don't. You can hear my internal dialogue there, just being so disappointed. But I don't know of any specific missions. But I have a feeling that if the return to flight of Vega C and the cadence of Vega C is, still as it is, incredibly lower than expected, if Ariane 6 sees any more delays for future missions, I wouldn't be surprised if any more missions went on a reliable US vehicle like the Falcon 9, because SpaceX have just been knocking it out of the park. Their cadence is unparalleled. It's unprecedented. It is just it is unmatched in the industry right now. So they are. If you need a launch vehicle, that is who you look at first, because they are the best, and there is no other way of looking at it. They are the best in terms of cadence and reliability today. So. It disappoints me to say that, but it is kind of the truth. They are number one at the moment.
Yeah, just to add to that, we have Hera and EarthKR right now, which are two missions that will launch on Falcon and not on Ariane 6. And as I think at this point, there's Galileo is very much under pressure at this point, because they are like right now the plan would be to fly Galileo satellites on Ariane 6 in January of 2024. I feel very confident at this point to make the call that will probably not happen. And of course, at some point, thinking about making sure that Galileo is still secured, you still have the coverage and access you want. At some point, there will be discussions starting about when to move some of these Galileo payloads to Falcon 9, because you cannot just wait forever to Ariane 6 to get ready to launch your very important satellites.
Yeah.
And you also have Falcon Heavy as an option too.
Yeah. I'm actually not sure with the Galileo. They might even fall. They're probably still Falcon. It depends on how much you want to launch. Like it's always the question, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yes.
Yes. Falcon Heavy is like, how much can I fit into this fairing? Because that's the main issue.
Yeah.
But I think we will see more Ariane and more ESA payloads move to Falcon 9, because we all know it takes some time to move, get the rocket into cadence. Even if Ariane 6 flies late this year or early next year, that doesn't mean it's instantly like in cadence and can fly like 6 times a year. It's probably will need a ramp. So we'll see how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanna see a European rocket again. It's cool to see Falcon 9, but it's like it's really frustrating. it's a bit frustrating, like to see your payloads being launched not by your own space program because it has not the capabilities. So yeah. Oh, that's a question that nobody. I will ask it. How many telescopes would we need to see all of space in real time?
I don't even want to try answer that.
A lot.
All of space?
Yeah. Like all of
all
space.
of the known universe, or
More
It
than
says
one.
all of space in real time.
can we just
Thousands
go
of
with
thousands of thousands.
can we just go with Carl Sagan's billions and billions? I don't know.
Yeah. I believe it's that's a good point, Alex, in the back channel here. Even Euclid will take 6 years to look at 1/3 of the sky. So it will take Euclid literally this whole 6 years of work for 1/3. So
And if
you
we're
would
talking real
need a
time,
lot.
remember that when it finishes that 6-year period, the first pictures that it took will be 6 years old.
Yeah. So you would need basically, quick math here, 6 Euclids to watch space every 6 years. So you can extrapolate
Yeah.
from there. You will need quite a lot. Which free.
I mean,
actually,
also
for
technically saying
physics. Wow, that was
you'd
bad math.
need telescopes everywhere because if you take a picture, you have loads of stars there. You can't see behind the stars, so you need another telescope to look behind the star in a different place. So I guess the number is technically infinite because you need so many different perspectives to see everything.
Yeah, it's quite. The answer is we will never be able probably to see space in real time all the time. That's the.
We do have an answer.
Sad.
I know Adrian won't understand it, but the answer is 42.
I've not watched that movie, but I know the reference.
All right, let's start.
Yeah, but I've not watched it. In your opinion, what is the most important science mission Falcon has ever launched? Oh, that's a super easy to answer question. Anybody, if you have already an answer?
I have an answer, but I'm not sure how serious it is because I don't know whether a wheel of cheese is the most scientific mission that a Falcon has ever launched. But I'd say that anyway.
Has launched or will launch?
Will launch is easy because I think we both say the same thing if we say will launch, because I think we say Nancy Grace Roman.
I was thinking Psyche, but
oh, it's like we have Nancy Grace Roman, we have Psyche, we have Euclid, we have Dart. I would say I would say will launch is, for me, it's Nancy Grace Roman, and launched I would say Dart. That's my answers.
I think
that's a fair judgment.
I think I'm going to go with Dart as well. And I mean, I prefer billiards over darts, but I think I'm going to pick Dart and then Psyche for future.
There we go. But it's quite impressive. The manifest of Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy at this point is just super impressive. These are like all AAA high-stake missions that just accumulate on one single rocket. That's really, really impressive.
A lot of people saying Europa Clipper in chat. Huh.
Europa Clipper is also a very good one.
Yeah.
There's a question I can actually ask. Are satellites built Are satellites built in Europe but launched in the US transported via plane or ship, or does it depend on weight? So, for satellites built in Europe, I noticed because there's a lot of them built in Germany actually, with Airbus Space and Defense. There's two ways. So you mentioned them both. There's ship. There's some transport at ship, but if there's scheduling problems or if they need to be in a hurry, or if they're like special constraints on transport, they also have the ability to, for example, use the Beluga, which they have used in the past, or they even has used Antonovs in the past for transporting payloads. So we have seen Antonovs, Belugas, but also ship transfer. It really depends on profile, mission, and CAT, and the general availability of everything. So, for example, with the European Service Module for Artemis, for the Artemis missions, they both have considered now that the Antonov is no longer really available. They have considered both Belugas or also ship transfers. So the answer is it's complicated.
Mhm.
So Jake agrees with you. That's that, or I've grown a tail all of a sudden.
Let's move on because there's like a giant shiny steel topic we still have to talk about. And we have not touched that yet, and apparently that's a rocket that a lot of people like to talk about. Because Starship static fired. Ship 25 successfully static fired its engines, all of 6 engines, so 3 sea level and 3 vacuum Raptors. And the test was confirmed successful by SpaceX, which is good. We want to hear that. But at this point, they're getting crazy good at this, as SpaceX tends to do. So that's impressive. And yeah, let's just start with the static fire first. Let's go with this in stages because there's a lot of things we have to talk about here. Static fire. That looked smooth, right? Ryan?
I mean, yeah, I don't think you can get any smoother than that, especially when, we don't have access to the precise numbers, we don't have access to the data, we just have access to a lot of cameras that were looking at it. And from the camera's perspective, the vehicle's still there, right? So I think that's a win at the end of the day. The engines don't look, completely destroyed. It's in terms of everything surviving, it was a good test.
Definitely. Sawyer, what's your impression on the test while you're being attacked by a cat?
I mean, I was on the stream for it. It looked good. It's weird because we hadn't seen a ship static fire like that in months and months. We're so used to everything that was being tested with the booster. So it's kind of nice to see the ship fire up its engines again. And it just makes it all that more exciting for, hopefully, in the next integrated flight test, getting to see the ship itself and that stage actually do its thing.
Yeah, it's kind of
Jake
crazy
agrees.
that we are talking about, and I know I said this before on the stream, so I hope I sound like a broken record, but we are already like halfway there in terms of vehicle readiness for the next orbital flight. Like this, or like the next integrated flight test. This is probably the upper stage being checked out. This is probably the upper stage being like, yep, works, done, check. Next up is putting it on a booster. So yeah, they are already moving in a crazy pace here, and we have noticed in the last few weeks that I feel like there was a feeling of this will take some time and whatever until it's ready, and suddenly everything just comes together, and they're really pushing ahead here full steam. And if you have told me like 1 month ago they will maybe launch in July, August, September, I would have called you crazy. At this point, I feel like, yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like super unlikely anymore. I don't know, Ryan, what's your impression on the SpaceX progress the last few weeks?
I mean, on the recovery from the first flight, I think this is going much faster than I think most people conservatively estimated. This is just, people when you see the launch site essentially destroyed with a massive crater, a concrete tornado being generated, being dented, or the outer shells of the tanks being dented, it just looks like, the doomsday worst case scenario, which, I mean, it kind of wasn't because the vehicle, didn't explode on the pad, but still it looks like a really torn up GSE, a really torn up stage 0. So it's seeing the recovery at this pace, I mean, it's faster than I expected, and it fills me with a lot of hope that, fingers crossed, we'll be able to see the next launch pretty soon, because it actually seems realistic. Which, if we said that 3 months ago, that would have been kind of, like, oh, he's silly opinions on Twitter, right? But they're actually working on it really quickly, which is just, awesome, and I love to see it.
Of course, we also have to talk here about the fact that we had a giant concrete pour the last few days, where they suddenly filled up the empty hole below the OLM. But I think even more important is what will also go into this hole, which is, of course, the giant deluge steel plate, the water steel plate, that has rolled out to the launch site, which there we can see it. It's late at night at, I think, 9 p.m. local. Yeah, there, 9:15 p.m. local. We have seen the deluge plate rolling out. Of course, that will be used in the future to make sure, like, I think it's the best explanation still is the shower head explanation. Basically, like a turned upside down shower head that you put on the ground, which just ejects water into the direction of Raptors and tries to basically deluge it with the energy and everything. So there's that. You can see it on transport together with the four persons that were just sitting on this plate, which I can tell you the people that were on that stream, including some people here on the stream, were enjoying quite a lot.
Yes. Unfortunately, they did get off halfway there. But yeah.
Yeah. It seems like somebody kicked them off. It seems like they were
Yeah.
no longer allowed to sit on that plate while it's rolling out.
Their lunch break was over.
Yeah. It's like is it because it's rocketry? It's called a launch break.
There you go.
Yeah, you're not the only
Stole
one.
one of Sawyer's pun tokens.
Yeah, I'm stealing that. I'm sorry, Sawyer.
That's fine. That was a good one. You deserve it.
Do you think this plate will work? Let's start with Sawyer. Do you think this method will successfully work in the end?
I mean, the answer I'm going to go with is I hope so. But I think part of it still is just the proximity to those engines. You're still really close to them, and it's going directly at it. So it's not like it's a deeper flame trench, which then curves and diverts it away. You're still firing directly onto the plate. So I think it'll do much better than it did during the first integrated flight test, because obviously it needed some kind of suppression there, more of that deluge, more of the water. But I think we're still going to see more damage than we would have liked, if I had to guess. I hope I'm wrong. I very much hope I'm wrong, but that's my guess.
I'm kind of in the same area. It's also hard to judge because maybe SpaceX has like a brilliant idea here that nobody ever thought about, and it will just work. But I feel like they're also in the stage where they hope it works. Of course, they tested it with like Run Raptor at McGregor, where they fired at a steel plate. But I guess they don't know yet. I mean, that's why they hardware rich test sometimes. They make some math and they hope it works.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it works, right? Musical was asking how much of the plate do you think will melt? So that's more on the pessimistic side here of the predictions of how this will work. Yeah, that's also a question. Like, will it melt or will it just be like ejected into every direction?
Well, of course, it's common knowledge that jet fuel can't melt steel beams.
You don't miss any opportunity.
Yeah, but I mean, you got 33 Raptors firing at it. It's always possible, but the water cooling should help. And again, it's steel, so it's probably less likely. So I'm hopeful that it doesn't. So I don't think SpaceX would be doing this if they didn't have some kind of math or some kind of something to back up the idea that this will be able to survive and even potentially be used multiple times.
This is an interesting question by Mike Smith. I will start to throw to Ryan first. If this type of deluge works, do you think others will adopt it?
I think potentially into the future. If we're talking like other companies and stuff, there's a lot of the pads that are currently being constructed have already been designed and they've already gone through processes and multiple iterations of design and whatnot. So I wouldn't expect to see anything like this if this works from other companies, in the near term. But in the long term, especially as more companies build up their pad infrastructure in different locations around the world, if this works, I wouldn't be surprised to see other people innovate off of it. But I don't think there'll be any kind of retrofitting. So, I wouldn't expect to see this under the Falcon pad at 39A. I wouldn't expect to see this under SLS at 39B, But I certainly think it could be an option if it works into the future for other companies.
Yeah, I think we've started to see this approach with Falcon a lot. Like Falcon certainly has an influence on this newer generation of launchers, in terms of a lot of design things. So, as always, if something works, it's not stupid to copy some of the very successful elements. It's certainly a way to go in the industry, especially in an industry that actually is kind of hard to get good working concepts because it's rocket science.
Imitation is the best form of
Yeah.
flattery, and that's true in the industry even.
Yes. So, will the FAA need a full test of the water deluge system prior to approval? Sawyer, do we expect any FAA testing, certified testing on this deluge system?
I don't know. Anything would be speculation, but I mean, I think we will see it in action, which should hopefully be enough data for them anyway, because pretty much guarantee that they're going to do some static fires on Booster 9. So hopefully we'll be able to see that in action, and that way they can send the data to whoever needs it, any regulators, anything like that, and kind of kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, I wonder if this, just to chime in here, I think that this might be a situation where it becomes relevant in the fact that the environmental assessment for example, talked a lot about sound suppression. And this, of course, changes the way sound is suppressed. So I think this might be a situation where this might be some regulatory area, because I don't think I don't think the FAA will look at like if it works. They don't. I think they will not look at like if this successfully can suppress this, because I don't think the FAA can make a decision on that. But I think they will work on it in terms of like how does it suppress the sound profile in terms of the environmental influence. I think that's the area how they might look at this. And yeah,
hmm
that's I think what's still going on. Oh, this is an interesting topic we have not touched yet, but we have to. What are the thoughts on the success of hot staging for Starship? So, just to summarize, this is also another thing that just happened with Starship. Apparently, Starship will hot stage. So, for the people who don't know what hot staging means you already ignite your engines and your upper stage engines before you decouple the vehicle. So, you basically make sure that the engines start to ignite and then you decouple from it, instead of what we see, for example, with Falcon. You see a MECO event, then the second stage floats for like a few seconds and then ignites. So it was confirmed by Elon on Twitter. Starship will hot stage, which is, to be fair, not a unique concept of Starship. It's not something that has never been done. We have rockets that hot stage, that are flying. It's just new on a reusable vehicle. Ryan, what's your initial impression on this whole hot staging situation?
I think if I was a passenger on Starship, I would prefer the hot staging to the kind of 360 flip methods that they seem to have been trying to use on Flight 1. I think it's certainly an interesting kind of procedure when you consider that this is a fully reusable vehicle, especially with the quote added shielding they need to put on top of Super Heavy. What all the reuse slash refurbishment of that look like, you know? So I think it's certainly interesting for reusability, but I think it's more realistic than the 360 flip, in my opinion.
Sawyer, what's your impression?
I mean, my thought is that you're also getting a bit of a performance boost in theory if you do it that way as well, in that you don't have to wait for that momentum to pick back up with your second stage. You're already continuing to go. You've got the engines basically at full throttle and you're on your way. So I think that will definitely help with performance and how much fuel you might need and things like that, and how much fuel you could save for reuse if you're coming and landing the booster back, or, whatever their plan is for that, whether it's the splashdown for these first tests or eventually recovering. I do see the concern of, that reusability on the first stage potentially, but then again, they know the characteristics, they know what the heating will be. I think depending on, how much force they're going to be using, is it going to be all the way up to full throttle right before it separates, or is it going to be at half throttle, something like that? They could maybe potentially use throttling to ease some of that potential damage. I'm sure they have a plan, so it'll be exciting to see.
It's certainly an interesting twist that suddenly is on the second flight and going beyond. Like suddenly we are in the we are hot staging this. So we'll see. So let's see how this works. But again, my overall take is it's not something super new. We have rockets that hot stage. I think it might work just fine. In the end, it's not as crazy as some other things they're trying to do. Like for example, catching a booster mid-air using 2 chopsticks. Like this is on the Starship crazy scale. It's relatively mid. I would call it. So that's my take on it. If this works, we will see all of this infrastructure change. For example, the steel plate in Florida. Sawyer.
I would think so. I mean, if you've kind of noticed, we talked about this on the last KSC flyover, a lot of the work Starship pads at KSC and at Roberts Road has quieted down dramatically. They're still doing things, but it's nowhere near the pace that we'd seen. And I think part of that is waiting to see, all right, what works and what doesn't down at Starbase. And if this does work, I could see that as a potential. I mean, they do have a little bit of a different system, I believe, already installed on the OLM down at 39A. But hey, any extra performance and saving that you can do of the vehicle, of your stage 0, especially with its current proximity to the historic 39A part, they will probably end up doing it.
I just saw a question by Musical Wolves here. Could mac and cheese be placed on the water-cooled plate to see if it cooks? I think no, because the Raptors would just burn it. It would be very burned mac and cheese. I think that's the answer.
If you put the breadcrumbs on top, maybe it'll just crisp those instead.
It's like Raptor engine taken out by mac and cheese. That would be a very sad story.
That's the headline.
Yeah, imagine it's just one little elbow of macaroni gets into one of the chambers, and that's what ends the mission.
It's like that would be. I think that would take the record for the most funny ending of a space mission ever. Like taken out by mac or cheese that somebody placed out of a joke.
Or better yet, you put a bunch of wheels of cheese in the top, and then as it melts during the mission, you have it flow down towards the engines to finish cooking it.
And you thought we would finish this NSF live without being very unserious at some point. Does that Mac? Okay, I'm still my brain is still in the mac and cheese mode. Does that make the full stack taller? How much? And will they have to move the ship QD higher? So, do they have to move the ship QD higher? Ryan, want to take that one?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, yeah, they have to modify it because it's going to be taller. Naturally, if you put in extra rings on top of the booster, it's going to move your ship up, so your quick disconnect interfaces are no longer going to be aligned like they need to be for the launch. So you have to move it up. There's no other alternative really for there. The pipes aren't stretchy, or rather, should I say, the plate on the end isn't stretchy. You know, they can't just be pushed up a little bit. You need to move you need to move the whole thing basically by adjusting pipes and struts and the whole shebang.
And that's what they already did. Actually, they've done that exact thing for that reason. And I do say it probably helps a little bit when getting ready to add the steel plate that there's already a nice little hole in the ground to make sure everything is all set, so you can just raise everything a little easier.
Yeah, they did just that with the. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because you don't want to change your whole very already known ship situation. You don't want to move that around suddenly if you can still work mostly on the booster without interfering a lot with that. So I guess that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Let me make sure we thank some people here because we have gotten an incredible support here. Like it's this will bear with me, but I want to make sure we thank everybody here. Musical Wolf with $5 super chat. Is the goal to a bit older here? Is the goal to use James Webb first, then use Euclid to look at the same spot? I'm not sure if that was confirmed yet. If they will put both on the same area, but it's certainly not out of the question. that they work together if there's
Yeah.
some findings, I would say, right?
hmm
Jacob becoming a red team member, Pat red member, sorry. Z becoming a red team member, and also John gifting 5 red team memberships. Thank you so much. And then LSR, actually a person that is on the team here, would like to do that sometimes here. Small contribution for the Sawyer Pun Appreciation Fund. I'm not sure if I should be glad for that.
Oh, I am.
We need like little tokens at the top, like a happy Sawyer face on a gold token. We're like, yay,
Oh,
got
God, yeah,
another
with like the
token.
Mario sound every time you get one deposited.
That's how you get a content ID strike by Nintendo. Also, Jim Cavett here with 5 gifted Red Team memberships. Thank you so much. And also Super Steph here with a $10 super chat with the Sawyer Pun Appreciation Fund, the SPAF.
Everything in space needs an acronym. I love it. The SPAF.
Yeah, it's the SPAF. And also Beat Forward here with the $20 super chat. Pun away, Sawyer. You're getting a lot of pun support here, Sawyer. It's
Oh yeah, well,
there's
I prefer to go slow, so I'm not going to pun very fast. I mean, run very fast, so it's fine. It sounds like they want me to leave if you tell me to pun away.
I want to propose to you as the chance of like a counter fund that's just like there's like a battle between 2 funds, and like they can also take away, because otherwise we silence the voices of the people who don't want the puns.
Well, I do appreciate the puns of support that I'm getting from everyone who likes the wordplay.
True. Musical Wolf here with a $5 super chat. ChatGPT solved the orbital launch mount concrete from being sent everywhere by using a giant bowl of mac and cheese as a launch mount. Yeah, I'm not sure why mac and cheese is now the on topic for this one, but apparently this is the mac and cheese NSF live episode. I'm getting hungry.
I know what I'm having
Musical
for dinner
Wolves
then tonight.
I don't have mac and cheese at home, so I'm screwed. Musical Wolves with another $5 super chat. The water cooled plate sounds better than a giant bowl of mac and cheese. More mac and cheese. David Graper with a $20 super chat. Any idea what temperature is reached beneath all these Raptor engines? That's very much guesswork. I could look at what methane burns on, if we can. But even then, I'm not sure what the temperature is like between all of these Raptor engines and everything. That is a lot of guesswork. Any idea, any ways to tackle this?
I don't think so.
I'm not sure.
Also, we have John here again. Thank you, John, by the way. This is like the 6th or 7th time I've already said your name in the Super Chat queue. $5 Super Chat. Flash steam hitting the Raptors. How could that possibly damage the engines? That's actually a good point. Like, there's also the instant evaporation of the water that will create pressure, right? So,
I mean, but if you think about it, it's already in use in all the other launch pads for Falcon and everything. You still have the Rainbirds. I mean, it's more after it lifts off where it actually is helpful, but it's not like it's an unheard of concept. So
yeah, so it's gonna be interesting, certainly, how this all works. I guess it's always interesting because every proof concept kind of gets weird once you talk about the biggest rocket of all time by like double the margin. So it's always interesting. Mary Old Elf with a $10 super chat with no message attached, and also Chris W with the Red Team membership gifted. Thank you all so much. Again, I know we say it a lot, but this really, really helps us, and it's amazing. And I hope you all thank the amazing people who gifted Red Team memberships here, because they give you some access to amazing behind-the-scenes content. So make sure to check that out. With that, I want to first thank the people that were on air today. I want to start with you, Sawyer. Thanks so much for being with us here today and sharing amazing insight.
Oh, absolutely. It's, I love this. It's a chance to get to talk about space stuff, which I love, hang with awesome people in chat, and annoy everyone in the back channel with my puns.
I kind of want to point out but that as the store person here, that makes me very happy that we have like 3 times NSF here just in a row. This is like right now making me very happy. Just saying. Also, Ryan was with us here for the show today. Ryan, thank you so much for being with us.
Very welcome. Just doing my part of promotion here, so you know.
And also, I want to thank Kevin in the background here, who had to bear with our craziness here for the last 90 minutes. So thank you so much, Kevin. And of course, I want to thank some people here as well, which is our amazing launch director and flight engineer level members, which are listed here on stream. This is the highest level of support we have, and I always want to make sure we thank these because it's just amazing how long these lists is and like how tiny text on the launch directors. It's just amazing. Thank you so much. And with that, I want to do one last thing, which is because I'm not American, but I want to wish the Americans in our community and, of course, the Americans on the team in advance a happy 4th of July coming up, because SpaceX already did that as well on the tower with the flag. So that's the final thing I want to make sure. And with that, I want to toss you all over to Space Coast Live, where you can watch Space Coast Florida activity 24/7. So with that, we end today's show. Thanks all for watching, and we'll see you all next time.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be normal.
RCPA chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, the planet.
Water towers fly! Yes! Echo down to nominal.
Flight downside FT off. Bring in FT off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Jingle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
If the methane will be igniting with the flare, correct?